So I think I'll just give you start with a bit of background about myself. I, I went to Japan to learn to meditate when I was 19, quite a long time ago. It was still the 60s. Sorry, you missed it. And what happened was I basically started with 14 hours a day of meditation with no instruction. That's how I kicked off, as it were. And at the end of the very first day, I knew this is it. I will be meditating for the rest of my life. I just knew it. My knees hurt, but I was really, really happy and alive and vibrant. And the context there of what you could call the spiritual community, or what we call the Sangha, it was a Zen temple with a master, an abbot, and 7 monks who were a bit like a centre in as much as, but it was residential. They lived there and they practiced full on, but they also put on meditations every morning for the locals. So before breakfast, we'd do us locals would do 3 hours of meditation. That was my starting point before breakfast, pickle and rice, you know. And so they were very much a communicating Sangha community, but they were also really into their own practice. So they did both, very much like our attitude here at the centre. We're all into our meditations and practice, but we share as well. But the big difference was they never told me anything, you know, a thing really, like, oh, just sit. Oh, okay. Or, well, for a day or two, be aware of the breath. Okay, that's it. I actually didn't get much more than that in a year. But there was a communication, you know, and that was, they turned up. They really turned up every day. They never missed. And they were there sitting, and you could see that it wasn't easy for them even. They struggled, but they did it. And for me, that I was taking in or imbibing, as it were, that lesson. That when you see the value of something like meditation, practicing mindfulness, and you decide to do it, you keep going. And I could see that also in the lay people who came every morning. And these were people who then just went to work after rice and pickle. You know, they would just do their jobs, you know. And I got quite quickly, I had an apartment in the precinct right next to the temple. So all I had to do was cross the road. And I taught English to survive for that. So that was my starting non-verbal Sangha, you know, but I learned a lot from it, actually. I also learned that Zen wasn't for me. That was one of the things. And then when I came back to London, I joined a Thai from Thailand, Theravadan group and teacher, which was very technical in Buddhist psychology, all the different categories of mental states. And I did learn a lot, including that wasn't for me. I mean, very good group, you know, very kind, and the teacher was very committed. But not long after that, I found this movement had a different name in those days. So I'm talking about 1971. All the fun was over. Not quite. And it was called the Friends of the Western Buddhist Order. That's what this moved. Now it's called Triratna. And the reason we shifted, just to explain that to Triratna, was our Sangha in India really grew. So Western Buddhist order didn't seem appropriate anymore to call it that. But for me, I still think of what we do here as Western Buddhism rather than Eastern culturally aligned Buddhism. That's why, and that's what I've always loved about this Sangha, actually. It's not that you have to be Western to practice, but we speak English, we don't learn Pali or Tibetan or any other Japanese. And so straight away, when I got involved with the Friends, two things happened. One was I was able to keep doing a lot of meditation because we were doing a lot of weekend retreats. Like once a month we had a retreat, and added ones as well in between. So I was continuing to meditate a lot, and that was really important for me. But I had about 30 peers who were all the same, more or less the same age as me. And what I found, the other thing I found was community, that we would talk about our practice, what we were doing, how that was. And almost straight away, quite a few of us decided to live together in community. So we squatted a big house and we started if it wasn't the first, one of the first communities of Triratna. And actually, I have been in community ever since. I think I lived alone for 6 months, once or twice in between all that. But that's my context, is community, talking to people in community about practicing together. So these two things of my love of meditation and seeing the value of it, and living with others and hearing others talk about their practice and what's going on with them, and me sharing my practice, as they come together, really. So I think that sort of gives the general picture. I've got both going on, meditation and community. But it's not just, in our house we've got 6 people living, but also I just love this sort of context. I think of this as spiritual community, as Sangha, as we would say, as well. And the online people, I feel very connected, and they know that. You might have guessed it, I love people, actually. I'm not like, oh, just leave me alone. I love to be alone. I really adore it. And I've done lots and lots of long solitary retreats, and I've always found it a delight, and spending time on my own. But I really like people, and I like to just communicate with people. And I wanted to give an example from here. A year ago, I met someone who's here at a bus stop. It was cold and crisp, and we started talking about the center and meditation. And a year later, they have come, and we had a great discussion. And so, communication is really important, And this has happened to me. That sort of thing has happened to me really all through my adult life, meeting people on trains, then they become ordained, lead a class, become a chairman or chairwoman, you know, think it happens. It does happen. And yeah, that's sort of interesting. So I would say that right from the beginning, from like my second year in the movement, I got ordained really quickly. So I was ordained in 72 and straight away realized that I didn't think of these words, but be a Sangha builder. So I wanted to help start centers where people could learn meditation and practice. And I started doing that straight away, all over, you know. I won't mention all the places I've started centers or been chairman of, but there are quite a few. And I've always felt that for me, it's part of my life is to engage with people about practice and periodically to be alone, somewhere quiet in the Yucatan or somewhere quietly on a beach, you know, and have that mix, you know, for me is really important. So one of the things that I've been very aware of in my life, both internally in myself and also in relationship to others in the house or community or the center that I've been associated with, is the importance of articulating clearly for myself and others and hearing others to articulate clearly about how one is effective in meditation. What really helps and what doesn't help. And so for us in our community, breakfast is really important. We sit for an hour, we have breakfast, and people talk about their practice and articulate what's going on. So that's just an example of that. But over the years, I feel that this process is personal to me, you know, that I think articulation of the abilities that you need, the skills that you develop, the attitudes that you imbibe and develop are personal, but they're generally important. And I think that that's one of the values, really, of collective practice and the tea breaks and going on retreat is, and listening to people like myself and others on the teams, that you get a clear articulation mentally, emotionally, viscerally, intuitively about how to practice and what helps and what doesn't help, and you learn. And I want to be clear, I don't just mean understand here. You know, you learn on a sort of more emotional, intuitive, experiential level, that when you go down a certain rabbit hole, you're lost and it didn't help. And you just go, no, boing, come back. So part of this process, I think, is a combination of listening to and taking in the traditional teachings of Buddhism and generally, and also on mindfulness and meditation. You take them in, you imbibe them, and you find ways of how they fit or not with you. And you make it your own in a way. I think that's one of the really great things about the Dharma or Buddhism, is that it's a process of making it your own rather than just ticking off everything that you should do. And in that way, are in a creative process. Like using the word creative can be tricky because we think of the arts and writing and culture, but actually a creative process is that you're engaged in the process of being aware what helps and what doesn't help, rather than just following a songbook, or a strict rules. The finding your way is a creative process. And it's a personally creative process. What helps, what doesn't help, what works, what doesn't work, and how it moves and flows and changes over the years. But also at the same time, there's a sense of universality about it. So a lot of the principles which I've felt to be really important and skills that are useful, I see them as universally useful, actually. Like the little thing, I give an example. I mentioned it when I was guiding you into be aware of the body and the breath. A couple of times I asked you to check your effort and your attentiveness. Are you too loose and sloppy, laid back? Are you too pushed and forced, or is it just right where you can be attentive and relaxed? Now, I learned that, but it is universally useful. It might not be something that really sticks now for you, but at some point you'll find being articulate in yourself about how you make an effort will be really useful to you. So I'm just giving that as an example. But I find things in myself and I share them. And in the sharing of them, they become clearer. I just wanted another little flag out for someone who's here. For years, I taught at a big bank. And actually, teaching in that group was really important to me because I was free just to try things out without any constraint. And I made friends there and we could talk. And that is still going on, 11 years on, 2 classes a week. And there are people finding the centres, finding their ways to the centres from those classes. Hooray. So, there are, and in a way for me, that is almost, they're not Buddhist, but it is for me, in the broader sense, Sangha. We're practitioners together, we're explorers together, we're finding our way together. And I'm learning from the people in that group as well. And some of them, they're really going for it in a good way. They are, yes, they got it, and it's so inspiring. So I just wanted to touch on one other thing within that whole context. Because I, in a way, have always been involved with starting centres or helping communities or leading classes, invariably, sometimes I've rubbed people up the wrong way. I don't know how or why, but it just happens. And they give me flack sometimes. Call me difficult. Or something like that. And I then have to deal with that. Yeah. And this is something that also happens in Sangha. That you might, there's a wide range of personalities and approaches and differences of character and temperament. And as you get to know people, you might find that you get a criticism, or people might even be a bit harsh. You have to learn how to deal with it. And quite early on in a very big community, in East London. I think there were 24 or 25 people in that. I wasn't in it actually at that time, but a friend of mine felt very aggrieved and hurt by an action of someone more experienced. And what struck me was they couldn't let go of that aggrievement and criticism and blame. And I just thought, you've got to do this. You've got to find a way of letting go of they hurt me, they did it to me, they should apologize. Rather than, well, actually, it's me who's taking this on. I'm the one who is having all these annoyed, angry thoughts, and it's me who should take responsibility for those, letting go of them. And sometimes some quite difficult things might happen, but you take responsibility and find ways of saying, well, that train of thought is past and not relevant anymore. This is quite an important little skill, actually. You go, it was 20 years ago, for heaven's sake. It's like a dog trying to get marrow out of a dry bone. It's just no use. It's not relevant, it's no use. It's not helpful. Enough already. Let it go. And finding your own way of doing that with various things. Sometimes it can take a while to do that, but you take it on, letting go, seeing through, and even seeing, well, actually, I had my part in all of that. It wasn't just them. I'd like to think it was, but actually it wasn't. So taking responsibility for yourself. And so a process of reflection in this way is personally very healthy. I think of it as house cleaning, clearing, sweeping, freshening my internal house and all the little dungeons and attics and things, all the cobwebs, all the gremlins. And it's necessary. You have to do housekeeping, in relationship to Sangha sometimes. So you take it on, So it's both a personal benefit, but it's also creates harmony with people in the Sangha.